We're told that destiny reveals itself in moments of triumph, that the right person shows up when the world is watching, when the spotlight burns brightest, when everyone holds their breath waiting for a hero. We're promised that true strength announces itself with fangs bared and claws extended, that worthiness must be proven through dominance, through the shift that separates the blessed from the broken. But here's what the fairy tales don't mention. Sometimes the person, meant to change everything, is the one everyone has already decided doesn't matter. I learned this the night I watched 300 she-wolves fail the Alpha King's challenge. I learned it as I stood in the servants' corridor, invisible in my gray uniform, while women far more beautiful, far more powerful, far more whole than I could ever be threw themselves at an impossible task. I learned it as each one walked away in shame, their wolves intact, their pride shattered, while the king remained alone on his throne, still cursed, still searching, still waiting for someone who could see what no one else could. They said the challenge was simple: solve the king's riddle, break his curse, become his queen. They didn't mention the cost of trying. They didn't mention that the king had 3 forms: man, wolf, and something in between that drove women screaming from his chambers. They didn't mention that every woman who failed left something behind: their confidence, their certainty, sometimes their sanity. And they certainly didn't mention that the answer had been hiding in plain sight the entire time, carried in the heart of an Omega who couldn't shift, who'd been cast aside by her own pack, who'd been told since birth that she was nature's mistake, a wolf-blooded girl with no wolf to call. My name is Camila. I have no pack name, because my father disowned me. I have no wolf, because the goddess, in her infinite cruelty or wisdom, decided I didn't deserve one. I have no prospects, no future, no value beyond the calluses on my hands and my ability to disappear into the background. But I have something no one else in this kingdom possesses. I have nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you start to see things differently. You notice the details everyone else overlooks. You hear the words beneath the words. You understand that sometimes the monster isn't the one with fangs, it's the world that decides who deserves to be seen as human. This is the story of how I failed at being normal, at being wolf, at being worthy. This is the story of how that failure saved us both. This is the story of a challenge that wasn't about strength at all. It was about recognizing the one truth everyone else refused to see. Sometimes the person who can save you is the one who understands what it means to be broken beyond repair, and chooses to stand anyway. If you're enjoying this tale of broken souls choosing each other against impossible odds, this complete novel, Rejected by the Alpha, shown on screen, is available now. This is a glow-up revenge romance that explores what happens when being not enough becomes your greatest strength. Link in the description. Now, let's meet Camila on the morning everything changes. Chapter 1. The morning they came to collect the debt. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from between the cracked stones of our courtyard. My fingers were already bleeding. I'd learned years ago not to wear gloves because my father would take them, sell them, claim I was getting above my station. The small rebellions of keeping my hands soft had died, along with whatever hope I'd once harbored that he might see me as more than a burden. "Camila!" His voice cracked across the morning like a whip. "Get inside." Now, I didn't hurry. Hurrying suggested eagerness, and eagerness invited more contempt. I stood slowly, wiping the dirt on my already stained apron, and made my way through the back entrance of our pack house, the entrance reserved for servants and disappointments. Inside, the main hall reeked of fierce sweat and desperation. My father, Garrett Perez, former beta of the Riverside Pack, before his gambling debts stripped him of his title, stood with his shoulders hunched in a way that meant he'd already made a decision I would hate. Beside him, my half-sister Lydia perched on the edge of Mother's old chair, her perfect blonde hair catching the morning light, her wolf practically purring beneath her skin with contentment, and across from them sat Collector Voss. Everyone knew Voss. He was the Alpha King's tax collector, enforcer, and occasionally, procurer of specialty goods. He wore expensive suits that seemed designed to remind people like us exactly how far we'd fallen. His eyes swept over me with the practiced disinterest of someone evaluating livestock. "This is the other daughter?" Voss's voice carried the bored inflection of a man who'd had this conversation 1,000 times. "Yes." My father couldn't even look at me, Camilla. She's 22. Healthy. Obedient. Obedient. The word tasted like ash in the air between us. Can she shift? Voss pulled out a leather-bound ledger, his pen poised. The silence stretched. Lydia's smirk was a knife between my ribs. No, my father finally admitted. She never developed her wolf. I watched Voss's pen pause. Watched his eyebrow raise just slightly. In the werewolf hierarchy, a wolfless omega was about as valuable as a chair, with 3 legs technically functional for some purposes, but mostly just pitied or ignored. I see. Voss made a notation. That does complicate things. But she's educated, my father added quickly, desperately. She reads, writes. She's been tutoring the pack pups in their letters. And she's… He gestured vaguely at me, as if my physical form might speak for itself. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead, I stood perfectly still, my bleeding fingers hidden in the folds of my apron, and waited for my father to finish selling me. The debt your family owes to the crown is substantial, Mr. Perez. Voss closed his ledger with a soft snap. 15,000 gold pieces, accumulated over 3 years of unpaid taxes, plus interest. The Alpha King has been remarkably patient. I can get the money, my father lied. I just need more time. Time has run out. Voss stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. You have 2 options. Surrender your property and assets which, by my assessment, might cover 1/3 of what you owe and face imprisonment for tax evasion. Or, he let the word hang, or? My father's voice cracked with hope and horror in equal measure. Or you provide a candidate for the Alpha King's challenge. Lydia shot to her feet. The challenge? But that's for hundreds of she-wolves have already tried. They say it's impossible. 347, to be precise, Voss confirmed. All have failed. The king is growing. Impatient. He's expanded the pool of candidates to include women from families with outstanding debts. Consider it an opportunity for redemption. Lydia could do it. My father turned to my half-sister with something that looked almost like love. She's strong. Her wolf is powerful. She'd make a perfect… No. Lydia's voice turned sharp. Father, you can't ask me to. I'm engaged to Thomas. We're planning the mating ceremony for spring. I won't throw away my future on some cursed king's impossible riddle. It would erase the debt, Voss offered mildly. Successful or not, any candidate who participates absolves her family's financial obligations to the crown. I saw it happen in my father's eyes. The calculation, the weighing of options. Lydia, his perfect daughter from his true mate, his second chance at pack respectability through her advantageous match, and me. The constant reminder of his first mate's death in childbirth, the daughter whose very existence seemed designed to humiliate him. What about Camilla? The words fell like stones into still water. Lydia's head snapped toward me, her expression cycling through shock, relief, and then something almost like pity before settling on vindication. Voss's gaze followed. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. She has no wolf, he said carefully. But she's educated. You said the challenge involves a riddle. My father was warming to the idea, building the narrative that would let him sleep at night. Kamala is clever, always has her nose in some book or another, and she's expendable. There it was, the truth laid bare. Not even, she's brave, or she's capable, or she deserves a chance. Just, expendable. I waited for the rage to come, the tears, the protest. But I'd learned years ago that emotions were luxuries people like me couldn't afford. Instead, I heard myself speak, my voice steady and distant, as if it belonged to someone else. I'll do it. 3 heads turned toward me. You'll do what? My father seemed genuinely confused, as if he hadn't expected me to have an opinion on being offered up as sacrifice. I'll participate in the Alpha King's challenge. I met Voss's eyes directly. In exchange for my family's debt forgiveness, something flickered across the collector's face. Surprise? Respect? It vanished too quickly for me to name it. The challenge is not without risks, he said, and for the first time, his tone carried something other than professional detachment. Every woman who has attempted it has left, changed, Some have night terrors. Others refuse to speak of what they witnessed. One threw herself from the North Tower, 3 days after her failure. I understand. Do you? Voss leaned forward slightly. The Alpha King is cursed, Miss Perez. His 3 forms are not merely physical variations, they reflect fragmented pieces of a broken whole. The challenge requires spending time alone with him in his private chambers. What happens there is between the candidate and the king. The implication hung heavy in the air. Lydia made a soft sound of disgust. When do we leave? I asked. Voss studied me for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Tomorrow at dawn. Bring nothing. You'll be provided everything you need at the palace. She's really doing this? Lydia's voice pitched high with disbelief. Apparently so. Voss tucked his ledger under his arm. Mr. Perez, upon Miss Camilla's participation in the challenge, your family's debt will be considered satisfied, regardless of outcome. You have my word, and the king's seal. He produced a document from his jacket, laid it on the table. My father's hands shook as he reached for it. One more thing, Voss added, his hand on the door. His eyes found mine again. The king asks each candidate the same question before they begin. Why have you come? Most answer with ambition, duty, or destiny. I'm curious what your answer will be. Then he was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive cologne and the sound of my father's relieved exhale. Lydia broke first. You're actually going to do this? Camilla. They say he's a monster. They say women come back broken, if they come back at all. Better me than you, I said simply. She flinched. Good. Let her carry that guilt. Let her remember that her perfect life, her perfect engagement, her perfect future was purchased with my expendability. My father finally looked at me. Really looked, perhaps for the first time in years. Camilla, don't. I held up one bleeding hand. Don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. You're trading me for your comfort, just like you've been trading pieces of me my whole life. At least this time I get something out of it. What could you possibly get? Lydia demanded. I smiled, though it felt like a wound opening. Away from here. That night, I didn't pack, because I had nothing worth taking. Instead, I sat in my small room, barely more than a closet, really, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The grief of being unwanted, the rage of being disposable, the bitter, hollow ache of watching my father choose Lydia's happiness over my safety without hesitation. But beneath all of that, something else stirred. Something I didn't have a name for. Curiosity. 347 women had failed this challenge. Powerful she-wolves with alpha blood, beta cunning, warriors and scholars and daughters of nobility. All had walked into those chambers and walked out defeated. What was in there? What was the riddle? What was the king looking for that no one could provide? And why did every instinct I possessed whisper that maybe, just maybe, my brokenness was exactly the qualification no one knew they needed? I pressed my bleeding fingers against the window glass and looked toward the capital, where the palace towers pierced the night sky like dark promises. Tomorrow, I would meet the cursed Alpha King. Tomorrow, I would face whatever had broken 347 women before me. Tomorrow, I would finally learn. If being nothing meant I had nothing left to fear. The moon rose full and heavy, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled their evening songs. My blood sang with the urge to join them, but my body remained stubbornly, devastatingly human. I closed my eyes and imagined what it might feel like to transform. To split myself open and become something other. Something more. To run on 4 legs with the wind in my fur and the ground trembling beneath my paws. But when I opened my eyes again, I was still just Camilla. Still just broken. Still just alone. Let's see if that's enough, I whispered to the moon. She didn't answer. She never did. Chapter 2. The Beautiful Prison. Dawn came too quickly and not quickly enough. I stood in the courtyard with nothing but the clothes on my back. A simple gray dress that had been mended so many times. The original fabric was more memory than material. My father waited by the gate, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Lydia watched from her bedroom window, her face pale in the early light. Voss arrived in a black carriage pulled by 4 massive horses, each one worth more than everything my father owned. The collector stepped down, assessed me with that same unreadable expression, then gestured to the open door. "No goodbye?" he asked, glancing at my father. "We said our farewells last night." My father lied. We hadn't spoken a single word after I'd left the main hall. Voss's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see, Miss Perez, if you're ready." I walked toward the carriage without looking back. There was nothing behind me worth mourning. The interior was more luxurious than any place I'd ever been: velvet seats, polished wood panels, small crystal lamps that somehow stayed lit despite the movement. I pressed myself into the corner and watched my childhood home shrink into the distance through the window. "You can cry if you need to," Voss said quietly. "Most do. On this ride." "I'm not most." "No," he agreed, pulling out his ever-present ledger. "I don't suppose you are." We traveled in silence for nearly an hour before curiosity overcame my determination to remain detached. "You said 347 women have tried. What makes the king think the 348th will be any different?" Voss's pen paused. "What makes you think you will be?" "I don't. But you came to collect me anyway, which means either the king is desperate, or someone believes desperation might be the missing ingredient." The collector's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "You're perceptive." "The king's advisors believe the curse requires someone with nothing to lose. Someone who won't be performing or posturing to win favor. Someone expendable. Someone authentic," Voss corrected gently. "There's a difference." I turned back to the window, watching the landscape transform from rural farmland to denser forests, then to the gleaming sprawl of the capital city. Buildings rose like monuments to werewolf prosperity pack houses, with elaborate carved facades, training grounds where warriors sparred in both skin and fur, market squares crowded with vendors selling everything from fresh meat to silver-etched weaponry. And above it all, dominating the skyline like a crown of stone and steel, the palace. It was beautiful. Impossibly, devastatingly beautiful. White marble walls that seemed to glow in the sunlight, towers that pierced the clouds, gardens visible even from this distance like emerald jewels set into the architecture, flags bearing the royal crest, a wolf's head wreathed in silver thorns snapped in the wind. "It looks like something from a fairy tale," I murmured. "Most prisons do, from the outside." I glanced at Voss sharply. He was looking at the palace with something that might have been sympathy or regret. "Is that what it is? A prison? For the king?" "Yes. For you?" He closed his ledger. "That depends entirely on what you choose to see." The carriage rolled through the main gates past guards in ceremonial armor, past manicured lawns where nobles strolled in their afternoon finery, past fountains that threw water 20 feet into the air. Everything was designed to inspire awe, to remind visitors of the crown's power and prosperity. But I noticed other things too. The way the servants kept their eyes down, the way the guards' hands never strayed far from their weapons, the way the beautiful facade seemed to press down rather than lift up. We didn't stop at the main entrance. Instead, the carriage continued around to a side courtyard, more utilitarian than decorative. Voss helped me down, then led me through a narrow door that opened into a stone corridor. "This is the service wing," he explained as we walked. "You'll be prepared here before meeting the king." "Prepared how?" He didn't answer. Instead, he opened another door and gestured me inside. The room was surprisingly large, not a dungeon cell as I'd half expected, but something closer to a bathing chamber. A massive copper tub dominated the center, already filled with steaming water that smelled of lavender and something else I couldn't name. Clean clothes were laid out on a bench. 2 female servants stood waiting, their expressions neutral but their postures tense. "Miss Perez will require bathing and dressing," Voss said to them. "Treat her with respect. She's a candidate, not a prisoner." The distinction seemed important to him. The servants both nodded. "When you're finished, they'll bring you to the king's wing." Voss turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Miss Perez? The question I mentioned yesterday, why have you come? Think carefully about your answer. The king values honesty above all else." Then he was gone, and I was alone with 2 women who looked at me with something between pity and fear. "Miss, if you'll remove your dress," the older servant said softly. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a severe bun. "I'm Helena. This is Mira. We're here to help you." I wanted to refuse, to maintain some shred of dignity and privacy, but I was exhausted from holding myself together, and the water looked desperately inviting. I undressed slowly, conscious of their eyes on my too-thin frame, my scarred hands, the body that had never been enough for anyone. The water was perfect, hot enough to sting, fragrant enough to soothe. I sank into it and felt something in my chest loosen slightly. Helena began washing my hair with gentle efficiency, while Mira scrubbed at my hands, trying to remove years of embedded dirt and calluses. "You're very brave," Mira whispered. "I'm very desperate," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Helena's hands never stopped moving, working some sweet-smelling oil into my hair. "We've prepared 347 women in this room. Most came with ambition or greed in their eyes. A few came with genuine hope of breaking the curse, but none came with the kind of quiet acceptance you're showing." "What happened to them?" I asked. "The other women." "After they failed." The servants exchanged glances. "They leave changed," Helena said carefully. "The king, he shows them something, or asks them something. Whatever it is breaks their certainty about who they are and what they want. But he doesn't hurt them?" "Not physically, but there are other kinds of hurt, aren't there?" I thought about my father's indifference, Lydia's relief, the years of being told my existence was a burden. "Yes, there are." They finished bathing me in silence, then helped me from the tub, and dried me with towels softer than any fabric I'd ever touched. The clothes they dressed me in were simple but fine, a white linen shift that fell to my ankles, a dark blue overdress with silver embroidery at the hem and cuffs. No corset, I noticed. Nothing restrictive or performative. Mira combed out my hair but left it loose, falling in damp waves down my back. "No jewelry?" I asked, noticing the other women had worn elaborate pieces in the palace portraits I'd glimpsed. "The king prefers authenticity to adornment," Helena said. "You'll meet him as you are, nothing more, nothing less." They led me back into the corridor, but this time we went deeper into the palace. The walls here were still beautiful polished marble, tapestries depicting the kingdom's history, sconces that held ever-burning flames, but the atmosphere changed, grew heavier, more watchful. We passed other servants who stopped what they were doing to stare at me. Some made signs of protection. Others simply looked away, as if acknowledging me might curse them by association. Finally, we reached a section of the palace that felt separate from everything else. The architecture shifted from ornate to austere. The marble gave way to darker stone. The corridor narrowed, and at the end of it stood a door. It was massive, twice the height of a normal door, carved from black wood and bound with silver that had been worked into intricate patterns. Thorns and roses, wolves and moons, beauty and violence intertwined so completely you couldn't have one without the other. Helena and Mira stopped walking. "This is as far as we can take you," Helena said quietly. "The king's private chambers are beyond. No one enters without his explicit permission." "What do I do?" "Knock 3 times. Wait. When the door opens, you enter alone. There's a formal receiving room first, then his personal chambers beyond. He'll be waiting for you." My heart hammered against my ribs. And then you face the challenge." Mira pressed something into my palm, a small silver token stamped with the royal crest. "If you need to leave, if you become frightened, show this to any guard. They'll escort you out immediately, no questions asked." I looked down at the token. An escape route. A promise of safety. I almost laughed. These women thought I might run from a monster, when I'd been living with different kinds of monsters my entire life. "Thank you," I said, closing my fingers around the token. "For your kindness." They both nodded, then retreated down the corridor, leaving me alone with the impossible door and whatever waited beyond it. I pressed my palm against the wood. It was warm, almost alive beneath my touch. I could feel something on the other side, not sound, exactly, but presence, weight, power, contained and barely leashed. 347 women had stood where I was standing. 347 had knocked and entered and failed. I thought about Voss's question. "Why have you come?" Not for love, I didn't believe in fairy tale romance. Not for power, I had no interest in being queen. Not for glory, I'd learned long ago that glory was for people who mattered. So why? Because I was expendable? Because I had nothing to lose? No. I knocked 3 times, the sound echoing like a heartbeat in the silent corridor. The door swung open, and I stepped forward into the dark, because that's what you do when staying still means dying slowly, and moving forward might mean dying quickly, but at least it's a choice you made yourself. The receiving room was breathtaking. Floor to ceiling, windows overlooked the Capitol, the gardens, the world I'd never been part of. Bookshelves lined one wall, stuffed with more volumes than I'd ever seen in one place. The furniture was elegant but sparse, a few chairs arranged near a fireplace, a desk covered in papers and maps, and standing with his back to me, silhouetted against the windows, was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly still in a way that suggested either complete control or complete exhaustion. "Close the door," he said. His voice was deeper than I'd expected, rougher around the edges. Not the cultured tones of a king, but something raw, more real. I closed the door. The sound of it latching felt final. He turned, and I understood, immediately, why 347 women had failed. The Alpha King was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful, all sharp edges and barely contained violence. Dark hair, dark eyes, features that might have been carved from the same stone as his palace. But it was his expression that caught me. Not cruelty or arrogance or the cold indifference I'd expected. Exhaustion, bone-deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. He looked at me the way I sometimes looked at myself in the mirror, like he was searching for something that used to be there and couldn't quite remember what it was. "Name," he said. "Camila Perez." "Pack?" "None." I was disowned. Something flickered in his expression. "Why?" "I don't have a wolf." He moved closer, each step deliberate. I forced myself not to retreat, not to lower my eyes, not to show the fear that was definitely present, but felt oddly distant, like it belonged to someone else. He stopped a few feet away, studying me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but instead felt oddly clinical. Assessing. 347 women have stood where you're standing, he said. All of them were stronger, more powerful, more whole than you are. All of them failed. Why do you think you'll be different? It was a test, obviously, but I was too tired to perform, too hollowed out to pretend. I don't think I'll be different, I said honestly. I think I'll fail just like they did. But unlike them, failure won't change my life. I've been failing my entire existence. One more failure is just familiar. His eyes narrowed. Voss told you to answer honestly when I asked why you've come. Yes. So answer. Why have you come, Camila Perez? I could have lied, could have said duty or hope or some other noble-sounding nonsense. But he'd asked for honesty, and I was too exhausted to be anything else. Because my father sold me to pay his debts. Because I'm expendable. Because staying in that house meant dying slowly, and coming here might mean dying quickly. But at least it's a different death. The silence stretched between us like a living thing. Then, impossibly, the king laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh or a mocking one. It was the sound of recognition of someone hearing their own truth reflected back at them in a stranger's words. Finally, he said, and some of the exhaustion lifted from his features. Finally, someone honest. He walked to the desk, picked up a piece of paper, then held it out to me. The challenge is simple, he said. Answer my riddle. If you solve it before dawn, the curse breaks. You become queen, your family's debt is forgiven, and you get everything you could ever want. If you fail. He paused. If you fail, you leave here unharmed but unchanged, just like all the others. I took the paper. On it, written in elegant script, was a single question. I am given freely but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking and kept by silence. I bind without chains and free without keys. What am I? I read it 3 times. You have until dawn, the king said. You may stay here, in these chambers. Ask me anything you wish. I'll answer honestly. I'll even show you. His jaw tightened. I'll show you what I am. All three forms. Because the curse can only be broken by someone who sees all of me and chooses to stay anyway. And if I solve the riddle, then you tell me the answer, and we'll see if the curse agrees with your solution. I looked up from the paper. What happens if I just leave now? Take the token and walk away? He smiled, but it was sad. Then you'd be smarter than 347 other women. But Voss tells me you're not here for smart reasons. No, I agreed. I'm here for desperate ones. Desperation and honesty. The king moved to one of the chairs near the fireplace and sank into it like a man surrendering to gravity. Perhaps that's what I've been missing all along. I stood there, the riddle in my hands, the token in my pocket, and the cursed Alpha King watching me with eyes that had seen too much and expected nothing. I'll stay, I said. Not because I thought I could solve it. Not because I believed in curses or fairy tale endings, but because for the first time in my life, someone had looked at me and seen not my usefulness or my failures, but simply me. And that was worth staying for, even if only until dawn. Chapter 3. The Beast's Question. The king didn't move from his chair, just sat there, watching me with those dark, exhausted eyes while I stood in the middle of his receiving room like a chess piece waiting to be played. Aren't you going to sit? He finally asked. I glanced at the other chairs, elegant, expensive, clearly meant for people who belonged in places like this. Am I allowed? His expression shifted. Not quite anger, but something close. You're a candidate for queen, not a servant. Sit wherever you're comfortable. I chose the chair farthest from him, though not out of fear exactly. More out of habit, a lifetime of learning. To take up as little space as possible, to be present but not intrusive, seen but not noticed. He tracked the movement, his jaw tightening. 347 women, he said quietly, and you're the first one who asked permission to sit in her own receiving room. It's not my receiving room, isn't it? You're here for the challenge. These chambers are yours until dawn or until you leave. Everything here, he gestured vaguely at the room, is meant for your comfort. I looked around again, really seeing it this time. The books. The fireplace already lit despite the warmth of the day. The desk positioned to catch the best light from the windows. Even the chair I'd chosen had a small table beside it with a glass of water and what looked like fresh bread and cheese on a plate. You feed all your candidates? I asked. I offer. Most are too nervous to eat. He tilted his head slightly. You should eat. You're thin enough that the wind could carry you away. It should have sounded insulting, but his tone was matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. An observation, not a criticism. I took the bread. It was still warm, probably from the palace kitchens just minutes ago. The cheese was soft and herbed, the kind of thing I'd only ever tasted once when Lydia had left scraps on her plate. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet. The king stood abruptly, moving to the windows. His shoulders were rigid beneath his dark shirt, hands clasped behind his back in a posture that screamed controlled tension. You should know what you're dealing with before you decide to stay. I already decided to stay. You decided before knowing what I am. He turned to face me, and something in his expression had changed. Become harder, more guarded. The curse didn't just split me into 3 forms, Kamala. It fractured who I am. The man you're looking at right now, this is the king. The ruler. The one who makes decisions and maintains control. But there are 2 others. I set down the bread, suddenly less hungry. The wolf and the in-between. The wolf is pure instinct, primal, dangerous. He doesn't speak, doesn't reason, only feels. And the 3rd form. His hands flexed, fingers curling into fists. The 3rd form is the beast. Everything the man suppresses, everything the wolf can't articulate. Rage and grief and hunger all tangled together into something that shouldn't exist. And I have to meet all 3? If you want to break the curse, yes. Because whoever loves me has to love all of me, not just the parts that are convenient or controllable or safe. He moved closer, and I saw the way his body fought itself, muscles tensing, then forcing themselves to relax. Most women get through meeting the man. Some can handle the wolf. But the beast, he didn't finish, didn't need to. That's what breaks them, I said. The beast. Yes. I should have been terrified. Should have reached for that silver token and demanded to leave. Instead, I found myself asking, why? What does he do? The king's laugh was bitter. He asks questions they don't want to answer, shows them truths they've been hiding from. The beast sees through every performance, every pretty lie people tell themselves, and he won't let them leave until they acknowledge what he's shown them. That doesn't sound violent. It's worse than violence. Violence you can heal from. But having someone strip away every illusion you've built about yourself, every comfortable story you've told to survive. He shook his head. Some women leave here hating him. Others leave hating themselves for what they learned. Either way, they leave broken. I thought about my father calling me expendable. About Lydia's relief when I volunteered. About the years of being told I was wrong, inadequate, less than. I don't have illusions to break, I said quietly. I already know exactly what I am. Do you? The king moved closer still, until he was standing directly in front of my chair, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Because the beast will test that. He'll dig until he finds something you haven't admitted to yourself, some hidden shame or secret hope or buried grief, and he won't stop until you face it. Then I'll face it. Why? The word came out sharp, almost desperate. Why would you subject yourself to that? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. You could walk out right now and your family's debt would still be forgiven. So why stay? It was the same question as before, but asked differently. Not, why have you come, but why are you still here? I looked up at him, this king who was clearly warning me away, who seemed almost angry that I wasn't running. And I realized something that probably should have occurred to me earlier. He didn't want me to succeed, not because he was cruel, but because he was tired. Tired of hope failing, tired of watching women realize they couldn't love what he was, tired of being the monster everyone feared and no one understood. I'm staying, I said carefully, because I've spent my entire life having people look at me and decide I'm not worth the effort, not worth patience or kindness, or even basic respect. And for once, just once, I want to know what it feels like to be someone's choice, even if it's only until dawn. His expression cracked. Just for a moment, but I saw it, the exhaustion giving way to something rawer, more vulnerable. You think I'll choose you? No. I smiled slightly. But I might choose you. And that's something I've never gotten to do before. Choose my own path, even if it leads nowhere good. The silence that followed felt heavy with things neither of us knew how to say. Finally, the king stepped back. The transformation isn't pleasant to watch. Most women ask to leave the room when it happens. I'll stay. The beast won't hurt you physically, but he'll say things that cut deeper than claws. I'll stay. And if you can't solve the riddle by dawn, I'll stay. I repeated firmly. Until dawn. That's the challenge, isn't it? I don't run. I try to solve the riddle, and whatever happens in between is just what happens. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I need to warn you about one more thing. The beast will ask you a question. Every candidate gets asked the same question, and every single one has answered wrong. What's the question? The king's smile was sad. I can't tell you. It would defeat the purpose. But I'll give you this advice. Don't answer what you think he wants to hear. Answer what's true, even if it makes you look weak or selfish or broken. Because he values honesty. Because he values authenticity. There's a difference. He moved toward a door I hadn't noticed before, half hidden behind a tapestry. The bedroom is through there. The transformation takes energy, and I'll need to rest afterward. You can stay out here if you prefer. Or I'll come with you. His hand paused on the door handle. You don't know what you're agreeing to. Then show me. The bedroom was simpler than I'd expected. Large bed with dark covers. More bookshelves, a fireplace, windows that looked out over the city lights beginning to sparkle as evening fell. It felt more like a sanctuary than a throne room, a place designed for retreat rather than performance. The king moved to the center of the room and began removing his shirt. I looked away reflexively, heat flooding my cheeks. You'll want to watch, he said, not unkindly. The first transformation is always the hardest to witness. Better to see it now, while I can prepare you, than to face it unexpectedly later. I forced myself to look back. He stood bare-chested now, and I could see the scars, dozens of them, crisscrossing his torso like a map of violence. Burns and claw marks and what looked like silver poisoning marks. From before the curse? I asked. From after. Every time I transform, it damages the body. The beast is too large for human skin. The wolf is too wild for human restraint. And the man, he touched one of the deeper scars over his ribs. The man tries to hold it all together and fails every time. That's why you're exhausted. That's why I'm dying. He said it matter-of-factly, like commenting on the weather. The curse is killing me slowly. A few more years at most. Breaking it isn't about finding love anymore. It's about survival. The admission hung in the air between us. The women who came before, I said slowly. Did they know that? No. I tell them it's about breaking a curse and finding true love. The fairy tale version. Because if they knew the truth that they're interviewing to save a dying man, they don't know they'd run even faster. But you're telling me. Because you already know what it's like to be treated as expendable. I won't lie to you the way everyone else has. He closed his eyes, and I saw his body begin to tremble. The wolf is coming first. He's easier, more straightforward, than the beast. Are you ready? No, absolutely not. But I nodded anyway. The transformation was nothing like the graceful shifts I'd seen other wolves perform. This was violent, brutal, wrong. His body convulsed, bones snapping and reforming, skin rippling like something was trying to tear through from the inside. He dropped to his hands and knees, gasping, and I saw his spine arch impossibly. I wanted to look away. Every instinct screamed to give him privacy, to not witness this violation of the body's natural limits. But I'd promised to stay, so I stayed. The wolf that emerged was massive, easily twice the size of any normal wolf, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the firelight. His eyes, though, remained the same, dark and exhausted, and watching me with an intensity that stole my breath. He padded toward me slowly, each step deliberate. Testing. I held perfectly still as he lowered his head and sniffed my hand. His nose was cold and wet against my palm. Then, unexpectedly, he just sat there in front of me like a dog waiting for permission. "Hello," I whispered. The wolf's tail moved, not quite a wag, but acknowledgement. I reached out slowly and touched his head. His fur was softer than I'd expected, thick and warm. He leaned into the touch, and I heard a sound that might have been a sigh. "You're not so scary," I told him. He huffed disagreement, or amusement. I couldn't tell. We sat like that for several minutes, me petting this impossible wolf while the city lights glittered beyond the windows. It felt surreal and strangely peaceful, like existing in a moment outside of time. Then his body began to tremble again. I pulled my hand back as the second transformation began. This one was worse, more violent, more painful to witness. The wolf's body expanded, twisted, became something that shouldn't exist in nature. Too large, too angular. Features that were both human and animal, and neither. The beast. He was terrifying. There was no other word for it. Standing upright like a man but covered in dark fur, hands tipped with claws, face elongated into something between wolf and human. His teeth were too sharp, his eyes too intelligent, his presence too overwhelming. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed to run. I stayed in my chair. The beast circled me slowly, his movements predatory and assessing. Then he spoke, his voice a low growl that somehow formed words. "Why are you here, little Omega?" It was the question. The one the king had warned me about. I could lie. Could say something noble about breaking curses or finding love or any of the pretty stories others had probably told. But he'd asked for truth, and I was too tired to be anything else. "Because I wanted to matter," I whispered. "Just once, even if it's only for one night, even if I fail. I wanted someone to look at me and see something worth staying for." The beast stopped circling, moved closer until his muzzle was inches from my face. "And if I told you that you already matter?" he growled. "That your worth isn't determined by others seeing it? What then?" Tears burned behind my eyes. "Then I'd say you're the first person who ever told me that. And even if it's a lie, it's the kindest lie anyone's ever offered. The beast's clawed hand moved slowly, carefully, and touched my cheek. The gesture was impossibly gentle for something so monstrous. Not a lie, he said softly. Truth. You matter because you exist. Not because you're useful or whole or powerful. Simply because you are. The tears fell then. I couldn't stop them. And the beast, this creature that had supposedly broken 347 women, pulled me against his chest and held me while I cried for the first time in years. Chapter 4. I woke to silence and soft morning light filtering through unfamiliar windows. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all rushed back: the palace, the king, the beast holding me while I cried myself into exhausted sleep. I sat up quickly, looking around the bedroom. The king in his human form sat in a chair by the fireplace, fully dressed, watching me with an unreadable expression. You stayed, he said quietly. I said I would. People say a lot of things they don't mean. He stood, moving to pour water from a pitcher into a glass. Most women wake up after meeting the beast and immediately ask for the token. You slept through the night. I accepted the water, suddenly aware of how dry my mouth felt. What time is it? Just past dawn. The challenge period has ended. He paused. You didn't solve the riddle. The paper still sat on the side table where I'd left it last night, the question mocking me with its elegant script. I am given freely but cannot be taken. No, I admitted. I didn't. Then you're free to leave. Your family's debt is forgiven. You fulfilled the terms. Something in his voice made me look up sharply. He was standing very still, that careful control back in place, but his eyes betrayed him. They looked resigned, like he'd expected this outcome and was tired of being right. What if I don't want to leave? His carefully neutral expression cracked. What? The challenge was until dawn. But dawn has passed, and I still haven't solved the riddle. I set down the water glass and stood, facing him. What if I want to keep trying? That's not how this works, Camila. The challenge has specific parameters. Made by who? You? Then unmake them. I crossed my arms, surprised by my own boldness. You said I could stay in these chambers until dawn, or until I left. I'm not leaving, and dawn has come and gone. So what happens now? The king stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. 347 women couldn't wait to leave. Why would you want to stay? Because I'm curious. It was true, I realized. Somewhere between meeting the exhausted king and being held by the gentle beast, curiosity had bloomed in my chest, a feeling I'd almost forgotten after years of just surviving. I want to know more about the curse, about you, about why the riddle matters. Curiosity is dangerous. So is hopelessness, but I've been living with that my entire life. I'll take dangerous curiosity over safe despair any day. Something shifted in his expression, the exhaustion receding slightly, replaced by something that might have been hope, or might have been fear. If you stay, you're staying of your own free will, not because of any challenge or debt. Do you understand that? I understand. I understand. And there are conditions. He moved closer, and I caught the scent of him, pine and smoke and something wild underneath. I won't keep you prisoner. You can leave whenever you want. But if you stay in these chambers. With me, all three of me. Why the chambers? Why not the rest of the palace? His jaw tightened. Because the man can maintain control in public, but the wolf and the beast can't. If you're going to be around when transformations happen, it needs to be somewhere private, somewhere safe. Safe for me or safe for you? Both. I considered this. Staying meant isolation, meant spending all my time with a man I'd just met, a cursed king who transformed into a beast at unpredictable intervals. It meant giving up whatever freedom I might have had in the palace. It meant choosing this strange, intense connection over anything resembling normal life. I'll stay, I said. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath. Why? And don't tell me it's about mattering or being chosen. Tell me the real reason. I thought about it. Really thought about what had kept me awake long after the beast had transformed back and laid down to sleep. About what made me want to stay in this beautiful prison with this fractured king. Because you're the first person who's ever been honest with me, I said finally. You told me you're dying. You showed me the beast instead of hiding him. You warned me away instead of manipulating me to stay. And last night, when I cried, you didn't tell me I was being dramatic or weak. You just held me. I met his eyes. I've never had that before. Honesty without cruelty, strength without dominance. So yes, I want to stay. Because even if I never solve the riddle, even if the curse never breaks, I want more of whatever this is. The king was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the hidden door behind the tapestry and pushed it open wider than before. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. I followed him through a short corridor I hadn't noticed last night into another room, and stopped dead in the doorway. It was a library, but not like any library I'd ever imagined. Floor-to-ceiling shelves covered every wall, filled with thousands of books, leather-bound volumes and ancient texts and new publications with crisp spines. Comfortable chairs were scattered throughout, each with a small table and lamp. Windows let in natural light that made the whole space glow. And in the center, a large desk covered in papers, maps, and what looked like journals. I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't find words for what I was feeling. Yours, the king said quietly. If you're staying, you'll need something to occupy your mind. The beast told me you value books. That you taught yourself to read because no one else would teach you. That you use stories to escape reality. I turned to stare at him. The beast told you that? When? Last night, after you fell asleep. He moved into the library, trailing his fingers along the spines of books. The three forms share memories, but we experience them differently. The man remembers facts, the wolf remembers feelings, the beast remembers truth. And what truth did he remember about me? The king pulled a book from the shelf, a collection of fairy tales, the cover worn from many readings. That you're desperately lonely. That you've built walls out of words because real walls were never enough to keep out the hurt. That you stayed last night not because you're brave, but because being with monsters felt safer than being with the people who were supposed to love you. Each word landed like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were accurate. The beast sees too much, I whispered. He sees what people hide, but he doesn't judge it, he just acknowledges it. The king set the book on the desk. I wanted you to have this space. Somewhere that's yours, where you can think and read and exist without performing or pretending. I walked slowly through the library, running my hands over the books. Philosophy and poetry, history and science, romance novels and adventure stories, plays and encyclopedias and journals written in languages I didn't recognize. This must have taken years to collect, I said. Decades. Reading was one of the few things that helped when the curse first hit. When I couldn't sleep because transforming hurt too much, I'd come here and lose myself in other people's stories. He settled into one of the chairs, and I noticed how carefully he moved, like his body ached. The curse has been active for 5 years. 5 years of searching for someone who could break it, and in all that time, I never thought about what would happen if I found someone who didn't want to break it but wanted to understand it instead. I pulled a book at random, a volume on ancient curses and their origins. Can I ask about the curse? How it started? You can ask anything. I promised honesty, remember? I settled into the chair across from him, the book heavy in my lap. How did this happen to you? The king leaned back, his eyes distant. There was a woman. A witch, though she'd probably prefer the term sorceress. She came to me 3 years into my reign, asking for sanctuary. Her coven had been destroyed by hunters, and she needed protection. I refused. Why? Because granting her sanctuary would have meant declaring war on the Hunters Guild, which would have destabilized half the kingdom. It was the right political decision, the responsible decision. His hands curled into fists. She begged, said she had nowhere else to go, that I was her last hope, and I still said no. So she cursed you. So she showed me what it feels like to be fragmented, to have parts of yourself at war with each other, to be seen as a monster even when you're trying to be good. His smile was bitter. She said the curse would only break when someone loved all 3 forms equally, when someone could look at the man, the wolf, and the beast, and choose all of it, not just the parts that were easy. I thought about this. About the impossible nature of the curse. Have any of the women who came before tried to love you? Some claim to. But love requires knowing someone, and I never let them stay long enough for that. One night, that's all any of them got. How can you love someone you've known for less than 12 hours? You can't, I said. Which means the curse was designed to fail. He looked at me sharply. What do you mean? You said she showed you what it feels like to be fragmented. To be seen as a monster while trying to be good. But then she created a curse that requires someone to love you, which means being vulnerable, being known, and you only give women one night to figure it out. I leaned forward. You're protecting yourself. Using the time limit as an excuse to never let anyone get close enough to actually see you. The silence that followed felt heavy with realization. The beast was right about you, the king said finally. You see too much too. I've had a lot of practice watching from the outside. You notice things when no one notices you. He stood abruptly, moving to the windows. What if you're right? What if I've been sabotaging every attempt to break the curse because being alone feels safer than risking rejection again? Then you're not that different from me. I set down the book and joined him at the window. I spent years convincing myself I didn't want connection because connection meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant giving people ammunition to hurt me. Better to be alone than to be abandoned again. And yet you stayed. And yet I stayed. I agreed. Maybe we're both tired of being safe. The king turned to look at me, and I saw something raw in his expression. Want and fear tangled together. If you stay, really stay, for more than just today, things will get harder. The transformations are painful to watch. The beast will ask you questions you don't want to answer. And the wolf. He trailed off. What about the wolf? The wolf is lonely. He'll want to be close to you, touch you, sleep near you. He doesn't understand human boundaries the way the man does. That doesn't sound terrible. It is when you're trying not to feel things, he said quietly. The man can maintain distance. The beast can hide behind intimidation. But the wolf just wants connection. And if you're here, he'll seek it from you. I understood what he wasn't saying. That letting me stay meant all three forms would become attached. That breaking the curse or failing to break it would hurt more the longer I remained. I'm still staying, I said. Why? The question came out almost desperate. Why would you choose this? You could leave, start fresh somewhere, find a pack that would accept you, build a normal life. Because I don't want normal. The words surprised me with their truth. Normal is what broke me. Normal is my father's indifference, and Lydia's pity, and an entire pack deciding I wasn't worth knowing. This, I gestured at the space between us, the library, the impossible situation. This is strange and difficult, and maybe doomed, but it's real. You're real with me. And I'd rather have strange and real than normal and hollow. The king reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered for just a moment against my cheek. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Good thing I'm not here because you deserve me. I'm here because I choose to be. Something in his expression cracked open, that careful control finally breaking. The riddle. Do you want to keep trying to solve it? I glanced back at the paper, still sitting in the bedroom. I am given. Freely, but cannot be taken. Yes, I said, but not because I'm trying to break the curse. Because I want to understand what you're really asking. And if you figure it out, then I'll tell you, and we'll see what happens. The king smiled a real smile this time, not bitter or sad. 347 women. And you're the first one who made me want to hope again. Hope is dangerous, I quoted back at him. So is curiosity. I think we're both in trouble. Probably. I moved back toward the library, drawn by all those books, all those possibilities. Since I'm staying, what should I call you? Alpha King seems formal for someone I've cried on. He followed me, and I heard the smile in his voice. Jane. My name is Jane. Jane. I tested the name. It felt strange on my tongue, intimate and dangerous, and absolutely right. I'm going to spend today reading everything in this library about curses and riddles and impossible promises. And I'm going to try very hard not to watch you the entire time. like some kind of stalker. I laughed, actually laughed, and it felt like opening a window in a room that had been closed too long. You can watch if you want. I don't mind. Dangerous words, Camilla. I thought we'd established that I'm comfortable with danger, and for the first time since arriving at the palace, since meeting the cursed king and his 3 fractured forms, I felt something that had been missing from my life for so long, I'd almost forgotten what it was called. Joy. Small and fragile and probably temporary, but real. I pulled a book on magical contracts from the shelf and settled into one of the comfortable chairs, tucking my feet under me. Jane took the chair across from mine, picking up a report from his desk, but I caught him glancing at me every few minutes. And I didn't mind. I didn't mind at all. Chapter 5. The Wolf's Devotion. Time moved strangely in Jane's chambers. I'd been there 3 days, or was it 4? 5? The windows showed the past Camilla of day and night, but the rhythm felt different from normal life. Slower, more deliberate, like each moment stretched and deepened, until hours felt like days, and days felt like weeks. Jane said it was part of the curse, time distortion. Inside these rooms, seconds moved at a different pace than the world outside. What felt like a week to me might only be 2 days in the capital below. Why? I'd asked on what I thought was my 6th morning there. So the loneliness lasts longer, he'd said simply. The witch wanted me to understand isolation, to feel how slow time moves when you're trapped and alone. Except I wasn't alone anymore. And neither was he. We'd fallen into a routine of sorts. Mornings were for reading me in the library, him at his desk handling correspondence that Voss delivered through a special slot in the door. Afternoons were for conversation, which ranged from philosophical debates about the nature of curses to silly arguments about whether poetry or prose was the superior art form. Evenings were when Jane transformed. The wolf came first, always. Gentle and quiet, seeking my touch like a starved thing finally being fed. I'd learned to read his body language, the tilt of his ears when he was curious, the way his tail moved when he was content, the soft whine he made when he wanted me to follow him somewhere. The beast came later, usually after the wolf had exhausted himself. And every time, the beast asked me questions. What are you most afraid of, little Omega? Being forgotten. What do you want that you won't let yourself ask for? To be someone's priority, not their obligation or their burden, their choice. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? That question had stopped me, because the obvious answer was, I'd give myself a wolf. But as I sat there with the beast watching me with those 2 intelligent eyes, I realized that wasn't true anymore. Nothing, I'd said. Because if I changed anything, I wouldn't be the person sitting here with you. And I think I like who I'm becoming. The beast had made a sound, something between a growl and a purr, and pulled me against his chest like he had that first night. Truth, he'd rumbled. Finally seeing truth. Now, on what I thought might be my 10th day in the chambers, I sat in the library working through another book on ancient curses while Jane dozed in the chair across from me. He'd been awake most of the previous night. The transformations were getting harder, more painful, and I could see the toll it was taking on his body. The scars were multiplying, new ones appearing almost daily, as his body tried and failed to contain 3 separate forms in one vessel. He was dying. I could see it happening in slow motion. The thought made my chest ache in ways I didn't want to examine too closely. You're staring. Jane's voice was rough with sleep, but his eyes stayed closed. You're dying. His eyes opened then. I told you that from the beginning. I know. But knowing something abstractly and watching it happen are different things. I closed my book, no longer able to focus on the words. How long? Honestly, I don't know. The healers think maybe a year, maybe less if the transformations keep getting more violent. And if the curse breaks, then, supposedly, I'll be whole again. One form, one self. The man and the wolf and the beast all integrated into something that doesn't tear itself apart trying to exist. He sat up slowly, wincing. But 347 women couldn't do it. I'm not holding my breath for number 348. I'm not trying to break it, I reminded him. I'm trying to understand it. Is there a difference? Maybe. I don't know yet. I stood, moving to sit on the floor beside his chair. It had become a habit being close to him, like proximity alone could somehow slow the deterioration I was watching. Tell me about the riddle, the real meaning behind it. Jane's hand dropped to my hair, fingers threading through it absently. The gesture was so natural now that neither of us commented on it anymore. The riddle, he said quietly, is about what holds people together when everything else falls apart. It's about the one thing that can't be forced or taken or bought. The thing that binds without chains and frees without keys. I thought about the words I'd memorized by now. I am given freely but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking and kept by silence. A secret? I guessed. Close. But secrets can be stolen or discovered. This is something that only works if both people choose it. Trust? Part of it. But trust is earned. This is given before earning, which is why it's so dangerous. I tilted my head back to look at him. You're not going to tell me the answer, are you? I can't. The curse requires you to figure it out yourself. But I can tell you this: every woman who came before focused on the first part. Given freely but cannot be taken. They thought it was about sacrifice or gifts or submission, but the real key is the second part. Broken by speaking and kept by silence. Yes, what grows stronger when you don't voice it? What becomes more powerful the longer you hold it unspoken? I thought about that. About all the things I'd held silent over the years. Grief, rage, longing. But those didn't bind people together, they tore them apart. I don't know. I admitted. You will. His fingers stilled in my hair. The beast thinks you're close. He can sense when someone's approaching the truth. What does the man think? Jane was quiet for a long moment. The man thinks he's getting too attached to someone who's going to leave eventually. That hoping is dangerous and foolish, and exactly what he's doing anyway. My breath caught. I'm not leaving. You should. The longer you stay, the harder it'll be when you die? I turned to face him fully, kneeling beside his chair. Do you think leaving now would make that easier? Do you think I could walk away and forget about you? Forget these conversations in the library, and the way the wolf sleeps with his head on my lap? You barely know me. That said, I know you transform into 3 different forms, and each one has been kinder to me than anyone in my entire life. I know you gave me a library because you understood I needed beauty and escape and knowledge. I know you're dying and you're still worried about me getting hurt. I grabbed his hand, holding it between both of mine. How much more do I need to know before I'm allowed to care about you? Camilla, tell me about your deepest shame, I interrupted. You want me to know you? Then tell me the thing you've never told anyone else. The thing the man hides and the wolf feels and the beast knows but won't say. He looked at me for a long time, clearly wrestling with something. Then, finally, he spoke. I'm relieved, he whispered. About the curse, about dying, because if I die, I don't have to keep trying to be perfect. Don't have to hold the kingdom together or make impossible decisions, or pretend I'm strong enough to carry everyone's expectations. The curse is killing me, and part of me is grateful because at least it's an ending I didn't choose. At least I can stop. The confession hung in the air between us. Raw and horrible, and achingly honest. Thank you, I said quietly. He looked startled. For what? For trusting me with that. For being honest even though it's ugly. I squeezed his hand. You want my deepest shame? The thing I've never told anyone? You don't have to. I'm barren. The word came out harsh, angular. The pack healers tested me when I turned 18, trying to figure out why I hadn't shifted. They found out my womb is wrong. Malformed. I can't have children. Can't carry on a bloodline. Can't fulfill the one biological purpose Omega wolves are supposed to have. Jane's expression shifted not to pity, which I'd been bracing for, but to something that looked like understanding. That's why your father called you expendable, he said. That's why everyone called me expendable. A wolf who can't shift is useless. A woman who can't bear children is worthless. Combine them, and you get me the ultimate disappointment. I forced myself to keep talking, even though every word felt like pulling glass from a wound. My mother died giving birth to me, and I can't even honor that sacrifice by continuing the bloodline, I killed her and destroyed any chance of redemption in one go. You didn't kill her. I know that logically. But logic doesn't change how it feels. Jane slid from his chair to kneel on the floor with me, his hands cupping my face. Listen to me. Your worth is not determined by your ability to bear children or shift into a wolf. You are not a vessel for someone else's legacy. You are Camilla, brilliant, brave, stubborn Camilla who sees through everyone's masks and refuses to run even when she should. You're just saying that because I mean it, he interrupted firmly. The beast knew from the first night. He could sense that you've been carrying shame that doesn't belong to you, that you've been punished for circumstances beyond your control. And he wanted me to tell you, has been pushing me to tell you for days that you are enough exactly as you are. Tears burned hot down my cheeks. I don't know how to believe that. Then let me believe it for both of us until you can believe it yourself. He pulled me against him, and I felt his heart beating steady and strong beneath his ribs. I can't give you a wolf. I can't fix your body or erase your past. But I can give you this: you matter to me. All three of me. The man values your mind. The wolf craves your presence. The beast sees your soul. And none of it has anything to do with what you can produce or provide. It's about who you are. I cried into his shirt while he held me, one hand in my hair, the other wrapped around my back. And for the first time in my life, being broken didn't feel like a failure. It just felt like being human. When the tears finally stopped, I pulled back enough to look at him. His own eyes were wet, though no tears had fallen. We're quite a pair, I said, voice rough. The dying king and the barren Omega. Sounds like the beginning of a fairy tale. Or a tragedy. Maybe both. He brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. Camilla, I need to tell you something. The transformations are getting worse. More frequent. The wolf might start appearing during the day. The beast might emerge without warning. If that happens, I'll be here, I said simply. Wherever here needs to be. You keep saying that. Like it's easy. It's not easy. But it's simple. I choose you. Keep choosing you. Will keep choosing you until you order me to leave. Or I physically can't stay anymore. Something in his expression broke open that last wall, finally crumbling. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You didn't do anything. That's the point. You don't have to earn this. I'm just giving it. Freely. Because I want to. He leaned forward slowly, giving me time to move away. When I didn't, his forehead pressed against mine, our breaths mingling in the small space between us. If I kiss you, he whispered, it stops being about breaking curses and starts being about something real. Something that will hurt if when it ends. I know. And you're still willing? Jane. I let my hand rest over his heart. I've been willing since the beast held me while I cried, maybe even before that. So yes. If you want to kiss me, and we'll deal with whatever comes after. He kissed me, soft at first, almost hesitant, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he held on too tight, but I kissed him back with every ounce of certainty I possessed. And he deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in my hair, while the other pulled me closer. It was nothing like the romance novels I'd read. There were no fireworks or earth-shattering revelations, just two broken people choosing each other in the space between heartbeats, knowing it might not be enough but deciding to try anyway. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. That was Jane started. A terrible idea, I finished. Absolutely foolish. Completely irresponsible. Want to do it again? Desperately. This time when he kissed me, there was less hesitation and more hunger. The kind of hunger that spoke of loneliness finally being fed, of connection finally being allowed. His hands mapped my back, my sides, my arms, like he was trying to memorize the shape of me through touch alone. And I let myself be touched and wanted and chosen. When his body began to tremble with the warning signs of transformation, I didn't pull away, just held him through it, watched the wolf emerge with his dark fur and gentle eyes, and laughed when he immediately pushed his massive head under my hand, demanding affection. You're shameless, I told the wolf. He huffed in agreement and flopped down beside me, his body warm and solid against my leg. Later, when the beast came, I didn't flinch. just looked up at him and said, "I think I'm falling in love with you. All three of you. Is that allowed?" The beast's clawed hand cupped my cheek with impossible gentleness. Allowed? Little Omega, it's the only thing that's kept me sane for 5 years. The possibility that someone might choose this, might choose us, despite everything. Then consider yourself chosen. He pulled me against his chest like always. But this time, I felt his body shudder with something that might have been relief, or grief, or hope so painful it felt like breaking. "The riddle," he rumbled against my hair. "You're so close to the answer. Can you feel it?" I could. It was right there, hovering just beyond my conscious understanding. Something about being given freely. About being broken by speaking and kept by silence. About binding without chains and freeing without keys. "Give me time," I whispered. "I'll figure it out. We don't have much time left. Then we'll make the most of what we have." The beast held me until he transformed back into the man, and Jane pulled me into bed not for anything sexual, just for the comfort of sleeping beside another person. His arm wrapped around my waist, his breath warm against my neck, his heartbeat steady against my back, and I thought about the riddle, as sleep pulled me under. I am given freely but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking and kept by silence. I bind without chains and free without keys. What am I? The answer danced just out of reach, tantalizing and close. I fell asleep, reaching for it, Jane's warmth surrounding me like a shield against the dark. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow I'll understand. But tomorrow came with complications I hadn't anticipated. Chapter 6. The Truth Behind the Curse. I woke to voices. Not Jane's voice, but multiple voices coming from the receiving room. I sat up carefully, trying not to disturb him, but his arm tightened around my waist. "Stay," he murmured, still half asleep. "There's someone here." His eyes snapped open, suddenly alert. Then I saw the realization cross his face, followed immediately by something that looked like dread. "What day is it?" he asked. I don't know. Tuesday? Wednesday? Time had become meaningless in these chambers. It's been 2 weeks. He sat up, running his hands through his hair. 2 weeks since you arrived. Which means outside these chambers, it's been 5 days. And today is the day the council meets. The council? He was already out of bed, moving to the wardrobe where formal clothes hung. "I'm not just the cursed king, Camila. I'm the actual king. I have responsibilities, meetings, decisions that can't wait, even for curses." He pulled out a formal jacket, dark blue with silver embroidery. "I have to attend the council session this morning." Something about the way he said it made my stomach clench. "What aren't you telling me?" Jane stopped, his back to me, hands gripping the jacket. "You thought the man and the king were different people, didn't you?" "What?" He turned slowly, and I saw the careful mask sliding into place. The exhausted, broken Jane. I'd come to know disappearing behind something more formal, more distant. The curse doesn't split me into 3 separate beings. It splits one being into 3 forms. The man you've been talking to, sleeping beside, kissing, that's the king. I'm always the king. I just let you think there was a difference, because it was easier. The words landed like blows. You lied to me. I omitted details. There's a difference. Don't. I stood, anger flaring hot in my chest. Don't do that. Don't hide behind semantics after everything we've shared. Everything we shared was real, he said. And for a moment, the mask cracked. But I never told you the full truth about the curse. About what it means to break it. Then tell me now. Jane set down the jacket and moved to his desk, pulling out a document. The original curse text, written in elegant script that I'd seen before in the library books about magical contracts. "The curse requires someone to love all 3 forms equally," he read. "But there's a condition I never mentioned. The person who breaks the curse must love the beast without knowing it's the king. They must accept the monster for what it is, not for the crown it wears." Understanding crashed over me like cold water. "That's why you never told them, never told me who you really were. Because the moment someone knows the beast is also the king, the curse can't be broken." "Yes. So by kissing me, by sleeping beside me, by showing me your vulnerabilities." My voice rose, You contaminated your own curse. You made it impossible for me to break it because now I know. I know the man and the beast and the wolf are all you. Yes. I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to hurt him the way I was hurting. Why? Why would you do that? Because I was tired. The words exploded out of him, raw and desperate. Tired of being alone. Tired of performing. Tired of watching women come and fail and leave while I stayed trapped in this beautiful prison. And then you came honest, broken, unafraid Camila, and for the first time in 5 years, I wanted something more than I wanted the curse broken. What did you want? To be known, to be chosen for who I am, not for what I can give or what breaking the curse might offer. To have 2 weeks where I wasn't performing or hoping or pretending. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I wanted you, Camila. Even if it meant destroying my only chance at survival. Even if it meant dying. I wanted these moments with you more than I wanted to live. The admission should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like a betrayal wrapped in honesty. You had no right, I whispered. No right to make that choice for both of us. Maybe I could have broken the curse. Maybe we could have had more than 2 weeks. But you took that possibility away without even asking me. I know. Do you? Do you understand what you've done? I fell in love with you, all 3 of you, thinking I might be able to save you. Thinking if I just solved the riddle, if I just figured out the answer, we'd have time. And now you're telling me it was always impossible, that the moment you let me get close, you killed any chance of breaking free. Jane's face was anguish incarnate. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything. You're still dying. The curse is still killing you. And now I have to watch it happen, knowing I could never have stopped it anyway. The voices in the receiving room grew louder. Someone knocked on the bedroom door. Your Majesty, came Voss's voice, carefully neutral. The council is assembled. They're waiting for you. Jane looked at me, then at the door, clearly torn. Go, I said flatly. You have responsibilities, remember? Can't let a dying curse and a disposable Omega get in the way of ruling. He flinched. Camila, go. He went. I stood alone in the bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of our 2 weeks together. His shirt that I'd been wearing as a nightgown. The books I'd been reading stacked on the nightstand. The indent in the pillow where his head had rested beside mine. And I understood, with devastating clarity, what the riddle had been asking all along. I am given freely but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking, and kept by silence. I bind without chains, and free without keys. A promise. The answer was a promise. I'd been so close, had felt it hovering just beyond reach, but I'd been thinking about it wrong. I'd been trying to solve it like a puzzle, like something that could be figured out through logic and research. But the riddle wasn't about logic. It was about what Jane and I had been building together. A promise unspoken that we would choose each other, would stay despite the impossibility, would love without guarantee or reward. The promise had been given freely. Both of us offering ourselves without coercion or expectation. It would be broken by speaking, by voicing it, making it official, turning it into something contractual rather than chosen. It was kept by silence, by showing up day after day, by holding each other, by choosing presence over words. It bound without chains, tied us together through choice, not obligation. It freed without keys, liberated us from loneliness, from shame, from the prisons we'd built around our hearts. A promise. The answer was a promise, and I'd been living inside of it for 2 weeks without realizing. I walked into the receiving room. Voss stood near the door with 3 council members, older wolves in formal attire, who looked at me with barely concealed disdain. Jane was dressed now in full royal regalia, looking every inch the king and nothing like the man who'd held me while I cried. Miss Perez, Voss said carefully. I'm afraid the king will be occupied with council business for most of the day. Perhaps you'd like to. I solved the riddle, I interrupted. Everyone went still. Jane's head snapped toward me. What? The riddle. I know the answer. I walked toward him, ignoring the council members' shocked expressions. It's a promise. The answer is a promise. One of the council members, an older woman with silver hair, gasped. She solved it? After 347 failures, this wolfless Omega solved it? Everyone out. Jane said quietly. Your Majesty, the council session. Out. Now. They left quickly, Voss ushering them through the door with apologetic murmurs. When we were alone, Jane turned to face me fully. You're right, he said. The answer is a promise. I know, but it doesn't matter. His voice was hollow. You knowing the answer doesn't break the curse. The curse requires you to love the beast without knowing he's the king. You know now. So even if you have the answer, even if everything else aligned perfectly, the fundamental condition can't be met. Because you told me the truth. Because I was selfish and weak and wanted you more than I wanted to survive. I should have been angry. Should have raged at him for ruining everything. Instead, I found myself asking, do you regret it? These 2 weeks? Jane looked at me like I'd stabbed him. How can you even ask that? Because you're dying, Jane. And if you regret what we had, if you wish you'd kept your distance and maintained the chance to break the curse, then at least your death would mean something. At least the sacrifice would have purpose. I don't regret a single moment. He crossed the distance between us, cupping my face in his hands. I would choose these 2 weeks with you over 100 years cursed and alone. I would choose knowing you over surviving without you. That's not noble or romantic, it's just true. Then why do I have to leave? His hands dropped. What? You heard me. Why do I have to leave? The curse can't be broken, fine. You're dying, I knew that from the start. So why can't I stay? Why can't I be here with you for however long you have left? Because watching me will destroy you. And leaving will destroy me faster. I grabbed his hands, holding them tight. You gave me 2 weeks of being chosen, of mattering, of being seen as more than my failures and limitations. You think I can go back to normal life after that? You think I can just walk away and pretend none of this happened? You have to. Camila, the transformations are getting worse. Soon the beast won't transform back into the man. The curse will trap me in that form permanently. And then, his voice broke, then I'll lose my mind, become truly monstrous. And I won't risk you being here when that happens. That's my choice to make, not yours. No, his voice went hard, taking on the formal tone of a king issuing an edict. As the Alpha King, I'm ordering you to leave these chambers. Your family's debt is forgiven. You're free to go wherever you want, build whatever life you choose. But you can't stay here. You're really doing this? You're going to order me away? I'm going to protect you, even from yourself. He stepped back, and I saw him physically withdraw, becoming the king again, burying the man I loved beneath layers of duty and control. Voss will escort you from the palace. You'll be given funds to start fresh somewhere, anywhere but here. I could refuse. I could just stay in the palace. You can't physically remove me. I could. I won't, because I promised I'd never force you. But Camila, his voice softened for just a moment, please don't make this harder than it already is. Let me protect you this one time. Let me do this one good thing before the curse takes everything. I wanted to fight, wanted to argue and scream and refuse to leave, but I looked at his face, at the exhaustion and pain and desperate love written there, and I understood. He wasn't protecting me from watching him die. He was protecting himself from the guilt of making me watch. Fine, I said, the word tasting like poison. I'll leave. Relief and devastation warred across his expression. Thank you. But Jane, when you're alone, when the beast takes over and you lose yourself to the curse, remember this. I chose you. I chose all 3 of you. And nothing, not curses or death or king's orders, will change that. You mattered to me. You still matter. And you'll matter even after you're gone. I walked toward the door before he could respond. Voss was waiting outside, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes sympathetic. Miss Perez, he said gently, I'll arrange transportation and… Just get me out of here, I interrupted. Now, before I change my mind and do something stupid like stay. He nodded and led me down the corridor. I didn't look back. Didn't let myself think about Jane standing alone in those chambers. Didn't let myself imagine the wolf searching for me at nightfall and not understanding where I'd gone. I just walked forward, each step taking me further from the only place I'd ever felt like I belonged. Chapter 7. The Cage of Freedom. Voss gave me enough gold to start over anywhere in the kingdom. I chose the border town of Millbrook, small, quiet, far enough from the capital that no one would recognize me as the Omega who'd spent 2 weeks with the cursed king, far enough that I could pretend to be someone else entirely. The cottage Voss helped me secure was perfect. Stone walls, a thatched roof, windows that overlooked a meadow where wildflowers grew in riotous color. Inside, there was a fireplace, a comfortable bed, and because Voss understood me better than I'd realized, an entire room that could serve as a library. He'd even arranged for books to be delivered. Dozens of them, carefully selected, based on the volumes I'd been reading in Jane's chambers. His Majesty wanted you to be comfortable, Voss had said as he supervised the delivery. He asked me to ensure you had everything you might need. Except him, I'd replied. Voss's expression had been unbearably sad. Yes, except him. That was 3 months ago. Or maybe it was 4. Time moved strangely here too, but in the opposite way, from Jane's chambers. Days dragged by with aching slowness. Weeks felt like years. Months felt like lifetimes. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of as a girl. Freedom, books, peace, no one to call me expendable or worthless or broken. The townspeople left me alone, accepting the story that I was a widow seeking solitude. No one questioned why I had no pack, no family, no connections. I was completely, perfectly alone, and it was destroying me. I tried to read, but the words blurred together. Tried to write, but my thoughts tangled into knots. Tried to garden, to cook, to exist in this beautiful cage I'd been given, and failed at all of it. Because every morning I woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Every evening I sat by the window, waiting for transformations that would never come. Every night I dreamed of dark fur and gentle claws, and a voice that growled, "Little Omega," like it was the most precious name in the world. I was free, and freedom, I learned, was just another word for loneliness, when the person you loved was dying somewhere you couldn't reach. I tried to get information about Jane, carefully, obliquely, asking merchants who came through town if they'd heard news from the capital. Most had nothing interesting to report. The king was still cursed, still searching for someone to break it, still slowly dying. Then, 6 months after I'd left, a merchant mentioned something that made my blood run cold. Heard the king's finally found someone, she'd said casually while selling me bread. Some princess from the Northern Territories. Beautiful thing, apparently. They say she's different from all the others. That maybe she's the one who'll break the curse. I'd smiled and thanked her and walked back to my cottage in a daze. Jane had found someone. The thought circled my mind like a predator, never quite attacking but never leaving either. Part of me wanted to be happy, wanted him to survive, to break the curse, to have the life he deserved. Part of me wanted to scream, to rage, to demand how he could replace me so easily when I couldn't stop thinking about him for even a moment. But mostly, I just felt numb. Maybe this princess could do what I couldn't. Maybe she could love the beast without knowing about the king. Maybe the curse could still be broken if he never told her the truth, never let himself be known the way he'd let me know him. Maybe he'd learned his lesson about being selfish. More months passed. The merchant returned with more updates. The princess was still there, still trying. The whole kingdom was holding its breath, hoping this would be the one. I threw myself into existing, forced myself to eat, to sleep, to maintain the cottage. Started helping some of the local children with their letters, the way I used to do with my old pack. Found small ways to fill the hours that stretched between sunrise and sunset. But none of it mattered. None of it felt real. I was a ghost haunting my own life, going through the motions of living while my heart remained in a palace chamber with a dying king. Then, exactly 1 year after I'd left Jane's chambers, Voss appeared at my door. I'd been sitting by the window with a book I wasn't reading when I heard the knock. For one wild, impossible moment, I thought it might be Jane, that he'd come to tell me the curse was broken, or that he was dying and wanted to see me one last time, or that he'd made a terrible mistake and needed me back. But it was just Voss. Older looking than I remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper with exhaustion or grief. "Miss Perez," he said quietly. "May I come in?" I let him in, offered tea I didn't have the energy to make, and waited. "The king is getting married," Voss said without preamble. 3 weeks from now. The princess from the Northern Territories. The words landed like blows, even though I'd been expecting them, preparing for them. So, she broke the curse? My voice sounded distant, mechanical. No, the curse remains, but she's agreed to marry him anyway, to become queen despite his condition. Voss's expression was carefully neutral. The king believes it's his duty to produce an heir before the curse claims him completely, to ensure the kingdom's stability. Of course, duty, responsibility, the things Jane valued above everything except, apparently, 2 stolen weeks with a broken omega. Why are you telling me this? Because the king asked me to. He wanted you to hear it from me, rather than through gossip or rumor. Voss pulled an envelope from his jacket. He also asked me to give you this. I took the envelope with shaking hands. My name was written on the front in Jane's distinctive handwriting, sharp and angular, like everything about him. Should I looked up at Voss. Should I read it now? That's your choice. But Miss Perez? His voice softened. The king is not well. The transformations have become daily now. Sometimes multiple times per day. He spends more time as the beast than as the man. The healers say he has months at most. And the princess knows this. She knows he's cursed and dying. She's chosen to marry him anyway, for the political alliance, and because she believes she can help ease his suffering. Voss stood. I should go. I have to return to the palace for the wedding preparations. Voss? I stopped him at the door. Is he happy? With her? The collector looked at me with such profound sadness that I almost regretted asking. The king hasn't been happy since you left, Miss Perez. The princess is kind and brave and dutiful, but she's not you. After he left, I sat alone in my perfect cottage, with the letter burning in my hands. I should have thrown it away, should have left it unread, should have protected myself from whatever words Jane had written. Instead, I opened it. Camilla, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it in the fire without opening it, but I need to say these things, even if you never hear them. I'm getting married. Not because I want to, but because the kingdom needs stability, and I'm running out of time to provide it. The princess is good, kind, everything a queen should be. She'll rule well after I'm gone. She's not you. I know that's cruel to write. Cruel to her, cruel to you, cruel to myself. But you asked me once to be honest, and I've tried to honor that even when honesty is a knife. The beast asks for you every night. He doesn't understand why you left, can't comprehend that I sent you away. He searches the chambers looking for you, and when he can't find you, he makes a sound that's half howl, half sob. It's the worst sound I've ever heard. The wolf is quieter about it. He just lies in the spot where you used to sit and refuses to move for hours. Like if he waits long enough, you'll come back. The man understands why you had to leave, knows it was right and necessary, and the only way to protect you. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. I'm not writing this to make you come back. You deserve your freedom, your peace, your chance at a normal life. I'm writing because you should know that you mattered, that you still matter, that you'll matter even after I'm gone. You solved the riddle. You figured out what 347 other women couldn't understand. And even though solving it didn't break the curse, it broke something else. It broke through every wall I'd built around myself and showed me what it means to be truly known. Thank you for that. Thank you for 2 weeks of being chosen. Thank you for seeing the beast and not running. Thank you for making me want to live even when dying felt easier. I hope you find happiness, Camilla. Real happiness. Not the hollow kind that looks good from the outside but feels empty within. I hope you find someone who deserves you, who sees you the way I saw you, who chooses you the way you chose me. And if you think of me sometimes, of us, of those 2 weeks in chambers that felt like forever, know that I'm thinking of you too. Every day, every transformation, every moment, until the curse finally claims me. Yours, even though I have no right to be. Jane. I read the letter 3 times. Then I walked to the fireplace, fully intending to burn it, to destroy this final connection before it destroyed me. But I couldn't. Instead, I folded it carefully and placed it in the box where I kept the few precious things I owned. The silver token Voss had given me that first day. A pressed flower from the meadow outside my window, And now this, a letter from a dying king who was marrying someone else but still thought of me. I should have been angry, should have felt betrayed or replaced or forgotten. Instead, I just felt empty. 3 weeks, Voss had said. 3 weeks until the wedding. I looked around my beautiful cottage with its books and comfort and perfect isolation. Then I looked at the letterbox, at the token that would grant me access to anywhere in the palace. And I made a decision. I couldn't stay here, hollow and half alive, while Jane married someone else. Couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what I could have said or done differently. But I also couldn't disrupt his wedding. Couldn't ruin his chance at stability for the kingdom. Couldn't be selfish enough to demand he choose me over duty. So I'd do something in between. I'd go to the wedding. Not to object or interfere, but to witness. To see him one last time. To let myself feel whatever I needed to feel. And then finally, let him go. It was probably stupid. Definitely painful. Absolutely, completely foolish. But Jane had taught me something during those 2 weeks together. That choosing connection, even when it hurt, even when it was doomed, even when it made no logical sense, was sometimes the bravest thing a person could do. So I'd be brave one more time. I'd go to the capital. I'd attend the wedding. I'd watch the cursed king marry his northern princess. And then I'd walk away for good, carrying the memory of 2 weeks when a broken Omega and a dying king chose each other despite every reason not to. 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to prepare myself for goodbye. It didn't feel like nearly enough time. Chapter 8. The Promise Kept. The capital was more beautiful than I remembered. Or maybe it was just that I'd forgotten how to see beauty during my year of isolation. Either way, the city sparkled in the late afternoon sun as my hired carriage rolled through streets decorated for the royal wedding. Banners bearing the king's crest hung from every building, flower garlands draped across doorways. People crowded the squares, celebrating with music and food and the kind of desperate joy that comes from hoping your dying king might find happiness before the end. I'd dressed carefully for this, not in the simple gray dresses I'd worn in Millbrook, but in the one fine gown Voss had included in my supplies when I'd left deep green silk that made my eyes look brighter, my skin less pale. I'd braided my hair, worn the silver token on a chain around my neck, where it would be visible but not ostentatious. I wasn't here to hide. But I wasn't here to be seen either. I was here to witness, to say goodbye, to close this chapter of my life with something other than running away in the middle of the night. The palace grounds were even more crowded than the city streets. Nobles from every pack in the kingdom had gathered for the ceremony, along with foreign dignitaries I didn't recognize. I slipped through the crowds, just another face among hundreds, and made my way toward the great hall where the ceremony would take place. Guards stood at the entrance, checking invitations. I didn't have one, but I had something better, the silver token that marked me as someone who'd attempted the king's challenge. The guard's eyes widened when he saw it, then he stepped aside without a word. Inside, the great hall had been transformed. White flowers everywhere, roses and lilies and delicate blooms I couldn't name. Candles lined the aisles, their flames dancing in the slight breeze from the open windows. Seats filled with wolves in their finest clothes, all watching the front where an elaborate altar had been constructed, and standing at that altar, looking like death pretending to be alive, was Jane. My breath caught. He was in full royal regalia dark suit with silver embroidery, crown catching the light, every inch the powerful Alpha King. But I could see what others probably missed, the way he held himself too carefully, like moving hurt, the tension in his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant pain. He was dying, visibly, obviously dying, and everyone was pretending not to notice. I found a seat near the back, tucked into a corner where I could see but wouldn't be immediately visible. My heart hammered against my ribs as music began to play the processional march that meant the bride was coming. The doors at the back of the hall opened, and the princess entered. She was beautiful. Of course she was. Long blonde hair woven with flowers, a dress that probably cost more than my cottage, and a face that belonged in fairy tales. She walked with grace and confidence, smiling at the assembled nobles like she was born for this moment. She looked perfect for the role of queen. She looked nothing like me. I watched her walk down the aisle toward Jane, watched him take her hand when she reached him, watched them turn to face the officiant who would bind them together in marriage. My chest ached with something too complex to name: grief and acceptance and love and loss all tangled together. The officiant began speaking about duty and honor and the sacred bonds of matehood. The words washed over me, meaningless sounds that couldn't touch the roaring in my ears. This was it. The moment Jane became someone else's. The moment our 2 weeks together became just a memory, a footnote in his life before he found someone more suitable. I should leave. Should slip out before the ceremony finished, before anyone noticed me, before I had to watch them kiss and seal their bond. But I'd promised myself I'd witness this. So I stayed. The officiant was asking for objections, the traditional moment where anyone who opposed the union could speak or forever hold their peace. No one spoke. Of course no one spoke. This was a political marriage, a duty fulfilled, a dying king trying to secure his kingdom's future. Then, by the power vested in me by the moon goddess and the wolf council, I declare, the windows shattered. Glass exploded inward as wolves in black tactical gear crashed through, landing in the aisle with weapons drawn, crossbows loaded with what I immediately recognized as silver-tipped bolts, blades coated in wolfsbane. Everything designed to kill werewolves quickly and efficiently. Assassins. Chaos erupted. Nobles screamed and scattered. Guards rushed forward, shifting into their wolf forms mid-stride. The princess stumbled backward, her perfect composure shattering as one of the assassins grabbed her, using her as a shield. And Jane. Jane moved like lightning, shifting partially not into the wolf, but into something in between, the beast emerging in public for the first time, all claws and fury and protective rage. But there were too many assassins, too many silver weapons. I watched in horror as one of them aimed a crossbow directly at Jane's chest, the bolt gleaming with poisoned silver. I didn't think. I ran, pushed through the panicked crowd, leaped over an overturned chair, and threw myself between Jane and the assassin just as the bolt released. Pain exploded in my shoulder as silver pierced flesh. I gasped, stumbling, and felt Jane's arms catch me before I could fall. "Camilla?" His voice was half human, half beast, full of shock and horror. "What are you? You shouldn't be here." "Shut up," I managed through gritted teeth. "And fight," the beast snarled, laying me carefully on the floor before launching himself at the assassins with renewed fury. I watched through dimming vision as he tore through them, as palace guards rallied around him, as the attack that should have killed the king instead became a massacre of those foolish enough to threaten him. The princess was pulled to safety by her own guards. The assassins were subdued or killed. And through it all, I lay on the marble floor with silver burning through my veins, thinking distantly that this was not how I'd planned to say goodbye. When the fighting stopped, Jane was back at my side immediately. Still in beast form, his clawed hands surprisingly gentle as they touched my face. "Why?" he growled. "Why would you do that?" "Because I love you," I said simply. The words came easily now, when they didn't matter anymore. When the silver was spreading through my system, and everything was going fuzzy at the edges. "All three of you. I've loved you since you held me while I cried. And I wasn't going to watch you die when I could prevent it. You're dying now instead. Better me than you." I smiled, tasting blood. "At least this way, one of us gets to survive." "No." The word was a command and a plea. "Camilla, stay with me. Don't you dare leave me like this." "Not my choice," I whispered. "Silver. It's already in my heart." Someone was shouting for healers. Voss's voice cutting through the chaos, demanding help, demanding miracles. But I could feel my body shutting down. Could feel the silver doing what it was designed to do: kill werewolves quickly and efficiently. Except I wasn't a werewolf. I was just a broken omega who'd never shifted, who'd never had a wolf to lose. Maybe that was why it hurt so much worse. Jane's form began to shift, beast receding, man emerging. He gathered me into his arms, holding me against his chest like he could keep me alive through proximity alone. "I can't lose you," he said, and his voice was breaking. "Not like this. Not after finally having you here again." "You're marrying someone else," I pointed out. "You already lost me. I never wanted her. I only wanted you. The marriage was duty, politics, everything I thought mattered more than happiness. But, seeing you here," his voice cracked, I would have stopped the ceremony, would have chosen you over duty, over the kingdom, over everything. If I'd known you were here, I would have chosen you. Something warm bloomed in my chest, fighting against the cold spread of silver. Really? Really? Camilla, I love you. I've loved you since you asked permission to sit in your own receiving room, since you stayed when you should have run, since you solved a riddle that 347 women couldn't solve because you understood what I was really asking. A promise, I whispered. The answer was a promise. Yes, the promise to choose each other, to stay even when staying is hard, to love without guarantee or reward. His tears fell onto my face, mixing with my own. You kept that promise. Even when I sent you away, even when I told you I was marrying someone else, you kept it. You came here to witness my wedding just so you could see me one more time. Kind of pathetic, right? Kind of brave. He pressed his forehead to mine. Camilla, listen to me. The curse doesn't matter, can't be broken. You told me I was wrong. He pulled back enough to look at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Understanding, hope, terrible, beautiful hope. The curse required someone to love the beast without knowing he was the king. But what if that was never the real condition? What if the real condition was for the king to choose love over duty, to choose vulnerability over control, to transform publicly, revealing what I am, because protecting you mattered more than protecting my secret? I tried to focus through the pain. What are you saying? I'm saying I just broke the curse. He laughed, the sound half sob. Not because you loved me, but because I loved you enough to stop hiding, enough to show everyone what I am if it meant saving you. The witch said I needed to learn what it felt like to be fragmented, to be monstrous while trying to be good, and I did. But the lesson wasn't about finding someone who could love all of me, it was about me accepting all of myself enough to stop performing. As he spoke, I felt something change. Felt warmth spreading through the chamber, like invisible chains breaking. Felt the air itself seem to lighten, as if some great weight had been lifted. The silver in my shoulder still hurt, but the cold spreading through my veins began to slow, then stop, then reverse. Jane, I managed. The curse is broken. Wonder filled his voice. Camilla, the curse is broken. I can feel it. The three forms, they're not fighting anymore. They're just me. All of me. Together. Healers rushed forward then, surrounding us, pulling the silver bolt from my shoulder with professional efficiency. Someone pressed a cloth soaked in what smelled like healing herbs against the wound. Someone else forced a bitter liquid down my throat that burned but pushed back the poison. Through it all, Jane held me, refusing to let go even when the healers tried to move him aside. I've got you, he kept saying. I've got you. And I'm never letting go again. What about the princess? I asked when I could breathe again without pain lancing through my chest. What about her? You were in the middle of marrying her. Jane actually smiled. I was in the middle of making the biggest mistake of my life. And then, you ridiculous, brave, impossible, you threw yourself in front of a crossbow bolt and reminded me what actually matters. So you're not getting married? Oh, I'm getting married. His smile widened. Just not to her. Jane, Camila Perez, will you marry me? He said it loudly enough that half the hall could hear despite the chaos of assassination cleanup. Not for duty or politics, or breaking curses. Just because I love you. Because you're brave and brilliant, and the only person who's ever seen all of me and chosen to stay. Because 2 weeks with you was worth more than a lifetime without you. Because, yes, I interrupted. Obviously yes. But you should probably ask the princess if she minds you canceling the wedding she just almost died attending. I'll compensate her kingdom generously for the diplomatic embarrassment, he said, completely serious. I'm the king. I can do that. That's a terrible abuse of power. Are you going to stop me? I looked at him, at this man who'd been willing to die alone rather than risk me, who'd just broken a 5-year curse because loving me mattered more than hiding, who was holding me like I was something precious and irreplaceable. No, I said. I'm going to marry you instead. The healers finally managed to pull us apart long enough to properly treat my wound. The silver had done damage, but not permanent damage. I'd live, they assured us. though I'd need rest and monitoring for the next few days. Voss appeared at Jane's shoulder, looking harried but somehow also pleased. Your Majesty, the assassins have been subdued. The princess has been escorted to safety and sends her, understanding. The council is demanding explanations. And approximately 300 nobles just watched you transform into a beast in the middle of your wedding ceremony. Let them talk, Jane said. Summon the council to the throne room. I'll address everyone at once. And Miss Perez? Will be with me. Always. That's not negotiable. Voss's smile was small but genuine. As you wish, Your Majesty. An hour later, I stood beside Jane in the throne room, my shoulder bandaged but the pain manageable. The council was assembled, along with various nobles, foreign dignitaries, and standing off to one side, looking remarkably composed for someone whose wedding had just been attacked, the northern princess. Jane's hand held mine, our fingers laced together in front of everyone. He'd changed out of his wedding clothes into something more practical, and I noticed that he moved differently now. More fluid, more whole. Like the three forms had finally integrated into one complete person. By now you've all heard rumors about the curse, Jane began, his voice carrying through the chamber with natural authority. That I could transform into 3 different forms, that I was searching for someone to break it. That 347 women tried and failed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. What you haven't heard is why the curse was cast, or what it really meant, or why it took 5 years to break. He looked directly at the assembled council members. The witch who cursed me did so because I chose political expedience over compassion. I refused her sanctuary because protecting her would have caused problems for the kingdom. It was the right decision for a king, but it was the wrong decision for a person. He paused, letting that sink in. The curse split me into 3 forms to show me what it feels like to be fragmented, to be seen as monstrous while trying to do good, to have pieces of yourself at war with each other. For 5 years, I've been trying to find someone who could love all 3 forms equally, who could accept the beast, the wolf, and the man. His grip on my hand tightened, but that was never what the curse required. The curse required me to accept myself, to stop hiding behind duty and control and perfect performance, to be vulnerable enough to show people who I really am, even if it meant being rejected or feared. He looked at me then, his expression full of love and gratitude. This woman, Camila Perez, threw herself in front of an assassin's bolt meant for me, and in that moment, I realized I'd rather transform publicly, reveal what I am to everyone watching, than let her die while I maintained my secret. I chose love over control, vulnerability over power, and that, he turned back to the council, that is what broke the curse. The throne room was utterly silent. Then one council member, the older woman with silver hair who'd been shocked when I solved the riddle, stood up. Are you saying, she began carefully, that the curse is broken? That you're no longer split into 3 forms? I'm saying I'm still capable of transforming into wolf and beast forms. But they're not separate beings anymore. They're just aspects of who I am, integrated and whole. Jane pulled me closer to his side. And I'm saying that I've found my queen. Not through a challenge or political arrangement, but through choice. Mutual, freely given choice. She has no pack, another council member protested. No wolf, no political connections. She's the woman who solved the riddle 347 others couldn't solve. Jane interrupted, his voice going cold. She's the woman who saw me at my worst and chose to stay. She's the woman who just took a silver bolt meant for me without hesitation. And she's the woman I love. If any of you have objections to her becoming queen, you can voice them now. But understand that objecting to her means objecting to me. We're a package deal. No one spoke. The northern princess stepped forward, drawing everyone's attention. She looked at Jane, then at me, then back to Jane. For what it's worth, she said clearly, I think you made the right choice, Your Majesty. I came here out of duty, prepared to marry a dying king for political alliance, but watching you transform to protect her. She smiled. That's the kind of love people write songs about. I won't stand in the way of it. Jane bowed to her, respect in every line of his body. Thank you, Your Highness. Your kingdom will be compensated for. Keep your compensation, she interrupted. Just invite me to the actual wedding. I want to see how this story ends. The tension in the room broke. People laughed, the sound releasing some of the pressure that had been building. The council members exchanged glances, then one by one began to nod their acceptance. Very well, the silver-haired woman said, though she didn't look entirely happy about it. If the curse is broken, and the king has chosen his queen, then we will support this union, though I suggest we have a much shorter engagement period. The kingdom has been through enough drama. Agreed, Jane said. We'll marry within the month. Within the week, I corrected, surprising myself. Everyone looked at me. What? I said. I've already waited a year. I'm not waiting another month just because the council needs time to adjust. We'll marry when we're ready, which happens to be soon. Jane's smile was radiant. Within the week it is then. Later, after the council had dispersed and the nobles had left, and the chaos of the day had finally settled into something resembling calm, Jane and I found ourselves back in his chambers. The same rooms where we'd spent 2 weeks falling in love. The same windows overlooking the capital. The same bed where we'd slept tangled together while time moved at its own strange pace. I can't believe you came to the wedding, Jane said, pulling me down to sit beside him on the bed. What were you thinking? That I needed to say goodbye. That I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. That maybe I'm as foolish as you are when it comes to choosing connection over safety. Foolish, he agreed. Completely foolish. He kissed me softly, carefully, like I might break. Thank you for being foolish. Thank you for loving me enough to break a curse. The curse broke because I finally understood the lesson. But Camila, he cupped my face in his hands. Even if the curse hadn't broken, even if I was still dying, I would have chosen you. Would have stopped that wedding the moment I knew you were there. Would have spent whatever time I had left with you instead of trying to do the responsible thing. That's terrible leadership. Probably, but I'm learning that being a good king doesn't mean sacrificing everything personal for duty. Sometimes it means choosing love and letting that make you stronger. I leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his wholeness, the way his heartbeat was steady and strong instead of erratic and failing. The riddle, I said quietly. You never told me if I was right. If a promise was really the answer. You were right. He pulled the original riddle paper from his desk drawer, the same one I'd tried to solve a year ago. The answer is a promise. But not just any promise. The promise to choose each other. To stay even when staying is hard. To love without guarantee of happily ever after. We kept that promise, I said. Even when you sent me away. Even when you were marrying someone else. We kept choosing each other. We did. He folded the paper and handed it to me. Keep this. As a reminder that some riddles can't be solved through logic. They have to be lived. I tucked the paper into my pocket, next to the silver token I'd been carrying for a year. What happens now? I asked. After we marry? Now we rule together, make decisions together. Try to build a kingdom that's less cruel to people who don't fit the standard mold. He smiled. And we fill that library with even more books. And we argue about poetry versus prose. And we let the wolf nap in sunshine while the beast asks uncomfortable questions. And we just live together. For as long as we get. That sounds perfect. It sounds terrifying, he corrected. But yes, also perfect. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to sparkle as evening fell. Tomorrow, there would be wedding preparations and diplomatic smoothing and 100 responsibilities that came with being queen. But tonight, there was just this two people who'd chosen each other against all logic, all odds, all expectations. Jane? I said quietly. If someone asked you the question, why did you come? What would you answer now? He thought about that for a moment, then smiled. I'd say I came to learn that being whole doesn't mean being perfect. It means being brave enough to let someone see all your broken pieces and trusting they'll stay anyway. And did you learn that? I'm learning it. He pulled me closer, wrapping both arms around me. Every day. With you. We stayed like that as night fell completely, as the stars came out above the capital, as the impossible became real, and the broken became whole, and the curse that had taken 5 years to understand finally released its hold. And somewhere in the darkness, I could have sworn I heard 3 distinct voices, man, wolf, and beast, all saying the same thing. Thank you. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for staying. Epilogue. The promise made whole. 6 months after the wedding that almost wasn't, I stood in the royal library, my library, though I still had trouble thinking of it that way, sorting through a collection of newly acquired texts on magical theory. The morning sun streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. "You're doing it again," Jane's voice came from the doorway. I looked up to find him leaning against the frame, arms crossed, a smile playing at his lips. He wore simple clothes today, just a shirt and trousers, no crown, no formal regalia. We'd learned quickly that being king and queen didn't mean performing royalty every moment of every day. Doing what? That thing where you forget you're allowed to be here, where you look around like someone's going to tell you this is all a mistake and send you back to that cottage in Millbrook. He crossed the room to pull me into his arms. "This is your library, your palace, your home. You're allowed to be here." I leaned into him, breathing in the scent that had become as familiar as my own. Old habits. They take time to break. We have time now. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. All the time we need. It was true. The curse breaking hadn't just healed Jane, it had given us a future we'd both stopped believing in. The healers confirmed that his body was no longer deteriorating, that the constant transformations had stabilized into something natural rather than destructive. He could shift between forms now whenever he wanted. The wolf and beast and man all working in harmony instead of fighting for dominance. The kingdom had adjusted to having a queen who couldn't shift, who had no pack name, who'd solved an impossible riddle and married their king in a ceremony that happened 3 days after assassins tried to kill them both. Some nobles still whispered, but they whispered respectfully now, especially after I'd helped negotiate a trade agreement with the Eastern Territories that brought prosperity to half the kingdom. Turned out that being underestimated your whole life made you excellent at seeing opportunities others missed. "The council wants to discuss expanding the education programs to rural packs," Jane said, still holding me. "They think your idea about teaching all children to read, not just the ones from noble families, might actually work." "Of course it will work. Literacy isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. See, this is why they're terrified of you. You make sense, and they can't argue without looking foolish." I laughed against his chest. "Is that your diplomatic way of saying I'm difficult? You're perfect. They're just learning to keep up." We stood like that for a moment, wrapped in each other and the quiet peace of the library. These were my favorite moments. Not the grand state dinners or formal ceremonies, but the small, stolen pockets of time where we could just be Camila and Jane instead of queen and king. "Your father sent another letter," Jane said quietly. I tensed. "And he wants to visit. To apologize, he says. To see how you're doing." Garrett Perez had been sending letters for months now, ever since news of my marriage spread. Suddenly the daughter he'd called expendable was worth knowing. The Omega he'd traded for debt forgiveness was someone he wanted to claim. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. "I think that's entirely your decision. If you want to see him, I'll support you. If you want to burn his letters without reading them, I'll support that too. If you want to invite him here just to tell him exactly what you think of him in front of the entire court," Jane grinned. "I'll absolutely support that and probably enjoy watching." I considered it. Part of me wanted that closure, that chance to show him what he'd thrown away, but a larger part knew that I didn't need his validation anymore. Didn't need him to see my worth for it to exist. "I'll write back," I decided. Thank him for his interest. Wish him well. And politely decline the visit. Because the best revenge isn't showing him what I've become. It's living so fully that I forget to care what he thinks. I pulled back enough to look at Jane. He doesn't get to be part of this, of us. He made his choice, and I'm making mine. Pride shone in Jane's eyes. "Have I mentioned recently that you're extraordinary?" "Not in the last hour." I was starting to worry. He kissed me, then soft and sweet and full of promise. When we broke apart, I saw the wolf flickering behind his eyes, playful and content. "Later," I told him firmly. "We have a council meeting in an hour, and I need to review the education proposal." The wolf doesn't care about council meetings. The wolf can wait. Jane laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. Fine. But tonight I'm all yours, all three of yours. That evening, after the council meeting where we'd successfully argued for universal education, much to several nobles' dismay, I found myself back in our private chambers. Jane was already there, transformed into his wolf form, and sprawled across the bed like he owned it. Which, technically, he did. I changed into comfortable clothes, one of Jane's old shirts and soft leggings, and climbed onto the bed beside him. The wolf immediately rolled over, demanding belly rubs with the shamelessness of a creature who knew exactly how much he was loved. "You're ridiculous," I told him, obliging anyway. He made a sound that was half growl, half purr, his tail thumping against the mattress. This had become our routine. Mornings were for the man for ruling and making decisions, and being the king and queen the kingdom needed. Afternoons were split between both forms, depending on what was required. But evenings belonged to the wolf and the beast, the parts of Jane that craved connection and presence more than words. As I scratched behind his ears, I thought about how far we'd both come, from the broken Omega who'd stood in that receiving room expecting to fail, to the queen who'd just convinced an entire council to invest in rural education, from the cursed king fragmenting under the weight of his forms, to the whole man who could shift between them with ease. We'd saved each other. Not in the dramatic, fairy tale way where love conquers all and problems disappear, but in the quiet, daily way where choosing to stay became its own kind of magic. The wolf shifted, transforming slowly into the beast. He pulled me against his chest, his clawed hands gentle despite their size, and rumbled contentedly. "Happy?" his rough voice asked. "Yes," I said honestly. "Are you?" "Finally. After 5 years of searching, I'm finally whole. Finally home." The beast's hand moved to tangle in my hair, a gesture that had become habitual for all three forms. "Thank you for staying, little Omega. Thank you for seeing us when everyone else looked away. Thank you for holding me when I cried. For giving me a library. For choosing me over duty." I pressed my hand over where his heart beat strong and steady. "Thank you for keeping the promise we never had to speak out loud." We stayed like that until the beast transformed back into the man, and Jane pulled me under the covers with him, our bodies fitting together like they'd been designed for this exact purpose. "I love you," he murmured against my hair. "I love you too, all three of you. We're not three anymore, just one very lucky king who found his queen." I smiled into the darkness. Lucky Omega who found her home. Both, Jane decided. We're both lucky. And as sleep pulled me under, wrapped in warmth and safety and love, I thought about the riddle one last time. I am given freely but cannot be taken. I am broken by speaking and kept by silence. I bind without chains and free without keys. A promise. The promise we'd made to each other without words. The promise we kept every day through choice and presence, and showing up even when it was hard. The promise that had broken a curse and healed 2 broken souls and built something new from the fragments of what we'd been before. Some riddles, I'd learned, couldn't be solved through logic or research, or trying to figure out the right answer. Some riddles had to be lived, had to be chosen, had to be made real through actions instead of words. And some promises, the ones worth keeping, were the ones you never had to speak out loud at all. Thank you for experiencing Camila and Jane's journey. If this story of riddles that must be lived, promises kept in silence, and 2 fractured souls finding wholeness together resonated with you, the complete novel Rejected by the Alpha, by Clarissa B.C., is available now. This is a glow-up revenge romance about an Omega who couldn't shift, finding her power. A cursed king learning to be whole. Love that chooses presence over perfection. The promise that saves them both. Sometimes the person who can save you is the one who understands what it means to be broken and chooses to stand anyway. Available now because some stories deserve to be lived, not just read. Link in the description.